Hopefully we don't have to drive too far tonight. So this is a work session, and you know, that's just exactly what it's for the board to work on saving money. So the public, you know, if you guys have a question, we'll talk to you about that at the end. But for right now, we're going to work with the board. So, Dr. Finney, you want to start us out with this?
Sure. Last work session, the board generated some additional questions and then directed us at the last board meeting to provide some additional data. So that's what we attempted to do, a bit of explanation. Would probably be in order. How we did this was just did a cut and paste from the Google Drive document the questions, and then things that had numeric answers I just typed in there as the response, and then one of the things was like fire marshal reports. So then Steve just put those, took them out of the file and made copies as we received them for all of the buildings. You'll notice then there was a question about the square footage, and thankfully there was, because discovered that there was an error. I haven't checked all of them, I just knew at the middle school, Brian, you were right, that the square footage is higher. And so then Steve and Mike and the guys literally took the wheel out and we did all of them. And so we're real comfortable with that. I think it was one of those situations that in all of the buildings we just had a number that was somewhere, and that's what was passed along, and so we should have probably double checked it earlier, but we're good with what we have now. We passed that information along to the Iowa Energy Center, along the Iowa Energy Group, or the Energy Group, and all of the data that you have dealing with energy costs for the buildings will be redone, and we'll get you that. We just didn't have it by tonight. As soon as that comes, we'll make that available to you. Then you'll also see that when we put together this 2 or 3 page, say we, it was John and I, this document with some of the data, we had some questions and also explanations that we didn't answer some of the questions. So as we go through this, or Chris, however you want to do it, if you want to go through it, we'll explain that a little bit more, and then you can give us some additional direction or where it takes us.
Yeah, I guess my thought is on it is instead of going through it piece by piece, does anybody have anything that they want to bring up? These are good questions, and the answers are good knowledge for us. The one thing that I would like to bring up right away is the survey. We've talked about that before. Personally, I think that's a good idea. I think we should do it. I don't know what the logistics of it look like, how hard it's going to be, how long it's going to take. But even if we get half of those back, I think we'll have a better understanding than we do right now.
You're talking about open enrollment,
right?
Sure.
If we close a building here, if we close a building there, if we close a building here, what are your thoughts? That's the thing I think of. Plus, it helps us. I mean, we're just one person, and you can't talk to 200 or 300 people and get their opinion, but this way we could. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
The only thing that I think we got to look at those questions real close how they're written, because if you don't, it's going to skew the answers real quick.
And what I gave to you was a 10-minute draft that I put together over a year ago. Just
right. So it was something for us to see kind of what it could look like.
Right. So if that's a desire when we get to the board meeting that you want us to work on that, we certainly will. I would say too that I think there's some rich data to be gathered there. I think you have to, as a board, you'll have to wade through that data because sometimes it's easier paper when it comes to crunch time, is that what you really do? Nobody knows. So it's a piece of data, but you have to be intelligent about the results. Right? And I think you should do it too. Just
Our 3 questions, do you, I mean, it's one of those things that you keep it really simple? Or could we add a few more? Or, I mean, I've not dealt with making out a survey and knowing what it all entails, but
I think your best results would be is to keep it as simple as possible. And the intent of, it's not put that way, but when we were playing with this, we were thinking about having the survey actually on a self-addressed postcard. So that you can fill it out, add your comment, 1 or 2 comments, check a box, and put it back in the mail. That's what we prefer to be, but that's kind of what we were thinking, of trying to streamline it so that we get the result. If it's really long and lengthy, it's going to impact the results, or the returns. Yeah.
an online survey, providing that as an option, do you think that that's even worth doing?
Always, if we can figure out how to do it and have good reliability.
One, yeah.
Right, because then it tabulates your results, and I hate using paper in this day and age. But that's one of the things that we have to think through is sending it out to just the people that you want to get that data from.
Survey Monkey, I know you guys use that.
Yeah, we have an account that we use.
The thing is, how do you get that to the people who need it? I mean,
Right, the right time frame. It's not like it's just available for the next, you know what I mean? It's like, it needs to be done by.
We can do some more investigating on that. I think the particular program that we have with Survey Monkey, you can't restrict it to one on this computer and it's going to remember it. We do have that capability through some programs at AEA that we can learn more about. So we'll do some more research on what that looks like. And that's not to say if somebody wanted to try to skew the results, they go from this computer to that computer to that computer. I don't know how we stop that. It is what it is.
What year did WLBA reorg? 96, 97?
96, July 96. When we did the enrollment question, I don't know where that came from. What was magic about 85?
I don't know. When I looked at stuff earlier, there was a reason for it.
I can't remember. The SAC column's as drawn, it's 289 in the second element. I think the other column's okay.
When did Wall Lake get?
96.
That was 96.
Yeah.
how does that, you know, I don't want to argue with you, John, but I graduated from Lakeview from WLBA in 92. That was the first year that we graduated, so why would 96 be the year?
Reorganization versus whole grade sharing.
Yeah, just like we
whole
did
grade
with
shit.
WLB and SAC for 4 years, same thing. Yeah, July 196 was the official reorganization.
Just like you said, it was July 1st.
We were whole grade sharing.
Diploma says WLBA on it.
Oh, probably does.
Got one?
It's not signed, but I got it.
I know that.
Well, I think before 2011.
Yeah, when we get to, when we
treated.
treated diplomas. Now, I don't know what you got out for that, I don't know.
I was just looking to get-
Sacklin or a, well, East Side. So maybe one offer or that's what you.
Maybe the board just said you're gonna get.
Yeah, that's what we're
WLB.
We're trying to get more fair.
So there really wasn't a huge significance to the 85, 86 because we couldn't, without a whole lot more digging, couldn't get there.
This was easy. This is as far back as the statement on the DE website.
Was it just 20 years ago, Dave? Is that what you were thinking?
I don't know, I have to look in the notes here.
What's the second one?
Was that?
What year is the second one here?
I think I remember you asking if there was something skipped on one of these things.
It wasn't,
What
it had something to do with the numbers.
Yeah,
I think we
we're looking at the trend of
played some.
talking about 10 years ago and 20 years ago.
Other questions that we can clarify or that you want to talk about?
I'll talk a little bit about the question regarding how many kids at the middle school The question was how many students at the middle school are from the former SAC or the former WLBA district. In our student database, we don't keep that information that way anymore. We did up until 2011. There was a code for former SAC student, former WLBA. Now we don't. So we went with the printout by zip code, and that's not going to be exact, but it'll give you an idea.
In the ballpark.
That'll give you an idea of the ratio, and we went ahead and did it for high school also. So. Now we still, as far as the elementaries go, we still pretty much use the same dividing line, right, Mike, for the two elementaries, for the most part.
It is the same one.
So that gives you at least an idea.
And that's probably why, like, when you, I don't know, it's probably why, but I think it's why you go down to like 3 questions lower, how many are from rural area. They're eligible for transportation in rural area, in my opinion, two different things. I mean, everybody from a middle school, well, in Auburn, is eligible for transportation.
Okay, here's how I had Phil figure that out.
Okay.
The 468 kids would be kids that live someplace where they're eligible for free rural transportation to the nearest center. So that's not entirely fair. I'll pick on Lakeview. Around the lake, they're eligible for transportation, but they live in the city. So it's not entirely all rural versus city, but it was an easy way for us to give you a real close idea.
Now, that 468, that will include all the high school kids that have their driver's license who drive themselves, correct?
Yeah, if they live on route.
Which is why the people that actually take school transportation is substantially lower.
I think that's the very thing that makes this so difficult for a district like this. We were over 300 square miles. Half our kids live in the country. We end up with a lot of transportation.
And as this
No matter what we do.
well, and as this process unfolds, that's certainly something to consider, because it's just a smidgen under 27 miles from the north part of the district and south part of the district. That's a jaunt. And I hope you understood I wasn't trying to be flippant and not giving you an answer at this point on, what's a comfortable number in the various schools. I really wasn't being flippant, but I think as this process unfolds, and you start talking about room size, there's quite a difference throughout the district, and really would be up to who gets to define what's a comfortable number. Could you put 25 kids into this room? You could. Is that what we should do? And that certainly should be possible.
I guess what I was wondering is, I didn't know if there was a limit, like, per square foot of a room with the fire marshal or whoever says, we can buy. Is that, or is it typically per building? Just per building?
I'll tell you what I know, and then we can find out more. I'm not aware, every building has a fire rated capacity by the fire marshal. I'm not aware that a particular room falls into that category like a traditional classroom. Saying that, we'll find out the answer, I don't know. But I think it's an individual decision of the district. If I'm wrong, I'll let you know for sure.
On the fire marshal topic, I don't know, maybe you guys have already been told this, but there is a grant that's available I need to get a hold of Phil.
Parking's grant?
Something about $50,000, okay, so you know about this, for anything that could help with the safety of your building.
Yeah. There's, I only know because we've received it once or twice while I've been on board. $50,000 Parking's grant. And,
So we've used that before. How often do they? And is it one of those things that you have to match?
I'm not going to know the details right now, it's been a while. But basically, it's like you say, when you get a fire marshal's report and there's work to be done, then you can use that report as a basis to apply for that grant.
Didn't we use that on the greenhouse or the ag building or something?
I don't remember.
But it was such a rigmarole to get.
I think we did it actually here in SAC before we were
And I think when I went through it was as WLBA, so we probably, maybe we both did it about the same time.
And I don't remember how we used ours or why. We had to do a bunch of alarms and stuff. They were like 20 feet apart, we had to have 18. So they moved everything in the next year.
Yeah, it was quite a
It
process.
was another deal the next
I
year.
think we bought a bunch of fire doors one year, of ours.
That wasn't ours. I think that's what
Something about that you thought that we would invest it probably in the 50,000 or there's one for 100,000.
Okay. Never seen that one.
So I don't know more about it. I don't know much about it, don't have this history.
Me neither, and he can't support it, he can't go out and like advertise it, but if somebody approaches him about it, then he has all the information.
How about so?
Learn a little more.
It's gotta be something. to do
I
about
don't
the fire marshal.
I'm Mr. Coffin. Flex Ed Center, does it have to be disconnected from all of our buildings? Can it be connected to, I never do it in elementary school, but can it be connected to the middle school or the high school?
There would be no legal restriction to doing that. Best practice would say that's a bad idea. You want that group of kids to be in their own environment because of not just of their educational experiences, and there's value in having it removed from the regular schools. So no legal reason you couldn't do it, but education, best practice would indicate it's a good idea.
So what are our thoughts as far as outside help goes? I know we've talked about having an architect, engineer come in and discuss this with us, not necessarily talking about fixing buildings up, but, you know, get their thoughts on what the best plan is for our district.
What did we do in this meeting here back in 2011 or 2012? The committee that was formed for the buildings?
Facility planning usage committee, yes.
So was an architect at that point hired?
Yes, after the work at the committee, and then the architect was hired to draw up some possibilities, so we get a handle on the costs and whatnot. That's all of the information that was out prior to the Pebble Bowl that went south. There were concept drawings and some people interpreting those as plans. But then we'd have some idea of what it would cost to do this to this building, or what it would cost to do this to this building. They also, at that point, we weren't asking about so much the operating costs. We were looking more at how could we upgrade our facilities and how much money it's going to cost. This is a little bit broader, but they offer those kinds of services as well.
So was there a cost for that architect?
I think it was about $3,500 or $4,000.
But the report would still be good for us to use, correct? Or would it need to be changed? I mean, how much of that information?
It's kind of two different things as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're at that point, we were talking about adding to each building to make each building a better place for our students, upgrading, yeah. Now we're looking at reducing costs, potentially, you know, doing something completely opposite.
I would, my recommendation would be, let's, when that time comes, I think we should start.
Although some of those recommendations may have reduced operating costs.
Oh, sure.
There'd have been an upfront expense, obviously.
No
but
question about that, yeah.
Reduce some operating costs on the back end.
Is there a local expert in the AEA?
Not for buildings, stuff like this. DE offers some services, and John and some of your board members been around, can talk about that.
One place I hadn't thought of, we may want to ask is our insurance company, our property and liability company. They have a lot of programs. And they go as far reaching as coming out and inspecting your roofs for you. I know when late 90s when we remodeled the kitchen, they sent an engineer out and did all the plans for us. That was free. All free. I mean, our premiums on it, $50 included.
a good idea, though.
We should maybe.
Yeah.
The ones covering what you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have an interest in you having
Correct.
efficient facilities.
Well, some of it depends what your motivation is. It to look at the, what shape the buildings are in and that type of thing? Absolutely, that makes sense. And really looking at the bigger picture that would include educational environment and all of those types of things, and they're not going to provide that service. That's going to be a purchase service or, if you're talking just buildings, just like only buildings.
Structure itself.
Yeah, then there, I think there's some very inexpensive resources. We actually, when we had done this, the other process, we got an awful lot of work for the $3,000 or $4,000 that we, and they banked on the fact that if the time comes for building, that they would have an inside track, legally an inside track. You still got to bid and all of that. You get that, but they own the system. That's why it was really quite inexpensive for what we got.
Anywhere along the lines where, did we ever have any numbers of demolition of any particular place? Did we get that far?
Well, it was estimated cost, but that's a slippery slope there. There was, in all of the numbers that we got, it was estimated to be this, but could have been quite a bit more, could have been quite a bit less. You don't know until you get into it.
We're talking a lot of, old buildings, which
Yes.
of course, asbestos and everything else comes up.
Right.
Costs a lot to tear a building down, too.
Yes, it does.
Any questions on the transportation?
No way to do that, is there?
There's no, a lot of questions.
How's our bus coming along?
The two propane buses that we have, Phil thinks, he threw some numbers at me the other day, I think we're saving about 30 cents a mile. So that's a couple $100 a week per bus, so that's good. The three buses we're waiting for, I'll leave that up to Kevin, 'cause
No, we keep talking, I'm just frustrated.
we're frustrated.
Okay.
Actually, frustrated is, it's a nice way of putting it.
Especially when we're saving money with the other two.
Yeah.
And you can
No, we're not
The
saving.
whole
money.
reason why we did it is because we wanted to save money, now we can't even do that because,
It's half there.
yeah.
And there is a point, I mean, maybe we're just at the frustration level, there's a point where you're saying, boy, it's nothing else, we'll just go buy a Bluebird. I don't care what the name is on it.
That's really efficient, the drivers seem to be happy with it.
I was gonna say, is that a better way to say it?
Yes. And I don't have an answer to when it is. Ask Phil to check that again this week.
So there are two, primarily two, I know nothing about buses, so there's two companies basically to go with, we picked one, and one over so well.
But two from Bluebird and two from Thomas, and the Thomas one's a good one. And we historically, I don't know about, since my time here, we tended to buy Thomas buses, and they've been very good. But in this case, they had an issue with the engine, and they wanted to fix it before they sent them out. And they've treated us well. They brought two brand-new diesel buses for us to use, because we'd accounted for the other two. And that service part's fine, but we're still not saving money like we intended to. And then if you want the frustration level to rise further, we also bought a small handicapped accessible bus so that we can transport a student in need ourselves and save money, and we continue to pay Region 12 for that.
Which is gonna save us more than just the fuel cost.
Great.
Yeah, frustration levels is up there.
So the notes that I've got here is, we wanna take a look at the survey and we wanna have that sent out some way or another. Does anybody disagree with that?
What kind of a timeline? How soon?
I don't know, I don't think that's something that you can do tomorrow, but I think we wanna have it done as soon as we can.
I'd say you're probably looking, I mean, we'll look at the options available to do it electronic and have a good handle on that, or are we better off using the old paper and pencil? Give us a month or so to put that together in draft so that you can look at it, and this is what you want it to say, and we'll have a process that we would recommend at that point.
Another thing to think about too is if you do use the paper and pencil, the fewer questions that you have, the easier it is to get it put it to the computer so we can look at it.
Right. So you can manipulate the data.
Yeah.
Rubs me the wrong way to even talk about using paper in this day and age, truthfully, but it should be on the table as an option.
Then the other thing that I have is talking to either an insurance company or an architect to help us with, and I don't think the age of the buildings and, I mean, I was in construction for quite a while, I know forensic construction, but to come in here and look at the age of a building and say, yeah, this is gonna last you another 5 years. Personally, I think we need some help with that. What do you guys think about that? Brent, what are your thoughts? You haven't said them on a lot.
Well, I know that one of the questions was whether or not the AEA had anybody to look at buildings or whatever. I know the department head probably further down the line.
They do.
That might be another place to look. They're the ones that helped with our site placement of the buildings when we consolidated or were thinking about consolidation. So there's somebody down there that's supposedly smarter than all of us. So, there is another phone number to call, I guess. Yeah, as far as age of buildings, you might have the nicest, prettiest building in the whole wide world, but it might be in the wrong spot. So, those are things to look at too.
Yeah.
But I know the DE's got somebody down there that he's talking through this.
Maybe a suggestion to consider would be, when we get to the regular board meeting, maybe one of the directions could be that have us bring you back some scenarios of possibilities there. What does the DE do? And part of this is, again, you're kind of taking a couple of worlds. You're talking about the building piece of it, but you also have to be talking about the educational program piece of it. We want to talk about both of those things, not just the physical facility,
That
because
was
a
something that
school is
really
a lot more than brick and mortars.
registered fever with me once I went through the Walt Life building and saw the actual classrooms that all those little kids are learning in every day, So yeah, I mean, you're very much right, I believe, in that aspect. I think that where they're going to learn best and how, and not just about the building. With that being said though, and I know you're probably going to just not even want to hear me ask this question, do we have a timeline as far as, do we have any goals as far as how soon we want to put something into place so we can actually see some savings? Or do we just meet once a month, you know what I mean? Do you see?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. When we started this process, a year and a half ago, at least, maybe 2 years ago, with the buildings committee, facilities, I don't think we had a plan, but I think we wanted to, get a really broad view of everything. And we looked at everything. We looked at buildings and outside, and now we're getting down to the point where we need to try to make a decision, and as far as the timeline goes, I don't know. I would hate to rush it, but I would hate for it to drag out for too long too.
In my 2 cents is when we were talking about trying to reduce operating costs, and we did a lot of things last spring. I publicly made the statement that we really need to do something within 2 to 5 years to help in that trend line of the spent budget authority. And just to frame it, I might as well just be blunt, because I'm just getting blunter. If there is discussion that a building needs to close, there's a whole lot, even after that decision's made, you're probably looking at least a school year before you can ever do that, because frankly, there's going to be building, in my opinion, there's going to have to be some reconstruction and probably building with whatever the decision the board makes. And that's going to have to go through the process of bids and all of that, architect and whatnot, and then we have to figure out the new transportation. Once that decision's made, at best, you're probably at least a school year away from being able to actually do it, and more than likely, you're talking 2 years. So
It should not be rushed. This is way too big of a decision. But nor should it be drug out for the next 5 years, because we really don't want to wait. Because then, we're in solid financial ground now, we're doing good things. We will have a problem if we wait 5 years, in my opinion.
One other thing that Amanda brought up, I don't know, a couple meetings ago, I can't even remember when you brought it up, but the new building scenario. You know, we talked about that a couple of times way back a couple of years ago, and we just kind of brushed it off as, yeah, we can't do that. I really think that has some merit to really look at. I mean,
On one campus.
yeah, and I don't think you get down to the nitty gritty and say this room's going to be here, this room's going to be here. I think here we need 10,000 square feet. What's it going to cost us?
Concept.
Yeah, and then we need to figure out too, if we have the tax base to be able to even pay for something like that. That may make that decision easy. If we don't have the tax base, then we forget about that and we move on.
But I don't think it should be ruled out necessarily.
Do you throw the pebble back in there again then, or?
Yeah, I think you have to think of all of your revenue streams when you talk about that. I talked to a couple of people in the last month or so at basketball games, and they have heard the option of building a new building. And younger people, they think it's a good idea. Not younger people like 16-year-olds, but 30, 35.
I have to say, I'm hearing more and more of that just in general conversation as you talk to people. They're more.
Here's another thing that you think about. You think about marketing your school. What would be better than saying, we've got a brand new school? That's pretty easy to market that.
And in visiting neighboring, go to some of the schools, and it's pretty cool when you walk into a new facility and see what just the whole environment is.
Let's add a little bit even more to it, that one of the things that, if you have a school that, say, is heated and cooled with geothermal, your energy costs go down, more upfront costs, yes, but then it also allows for educational discussions about, some people have asked, why haven't you investigated a year-round school? Well, the reason is that we don't have the facilities at this point to make that viable. If you have a facility like what you're describing, that now becomes an educational discussion, not just bricks and mortar.
Correct, and with what's going on right now with the whole 4-day discussion, I don't know, I guess I don't know what negative things there'd be about year-round school. People are thinking, that I can't have the retention.
Oh, and that's in the 4-day school. We have a 4-day school week all year round. Get the best of both worlds. Right?
That's not confusing.
The one thing about what you mentioned about PEPL, and for the longest time, SAC school district had a PEPL levy, and we never did have instructional support. Well, you guys did the opposite. So this district as a whole has never had both. Right now we got the instructional support. So I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I'm just saying this district as a whole has never had both of them, and they do add up, so.
Sure.
It'd have to be voted.
It has to be voted. Well,
We'd have
10-year has to be voted,
Right.
5-year can be board approved.
with a whole bunch of people yelling. So voted.
Well, I think it's,
For Pebble?
you can do 5-year.
I didn't, I knew that's
I
instructional
think,
support.
right?
I think so.
But you can't do the whole dollar.
Yeah, you do the whole dollar, but it's got to be.
And then it's a small petition, though, to send it to vote from the public. I mean, I think like
Oh, the public can still veto
100 or
it.
200.
Just like the instructional support letter. It's the same scenario.
I could be wrong, but I think that's about right.
Yeah. But anyway, my point was that we've never, as a district, done both. And right now, we're just having instructional support and health help. So that was my whole point.
Now, if you want to get, I guess I would describe this process as that you've got a big funnel and it needs to be funnel, coming down to keep things moving. One of the things, if there's an interest in, what would the cost be to have a one campus facility that would handle 1,000 to 1,200 kids, pick a number, whatever, we're at about 1,000 right now. We would need professional help. Should have stopped, should have paused.
Actually, I don't know how much help you really need. I'm saying that the wrong way. I'm just saying, somebody's built it in the last 5 years.
We could get you ballpark if that's what you
Somebody's
want.
built it already, someplace, somewhere. Doesn't matter where, I'm just saying, it's in Iowa, it's been built, thousands.
I see. And
So,
and
just find out what they cost.
General numbers.
Without giving, yeah. without-
Because if it's $28 million, I can tell you right now, you don't have to have a vote. It'll never happen. If it's 2.8 million, you don't even have to have a vote either, we'll do it. That will save money, silo money, so, but you know what I'm getting at. That's an easy number, you don't have to actually hire him to do it, just find somebody that's done it and call them and find out what it costs. So,
Fair enough.
So I think that should be figured in with our whole, all the other things that we're doing.
It has
I'm glad
to.
you brought it up.
When you're making a decision like this, it has to.
Well, the other thing that you can consider as a board, if you want, is directing us to get more specific about some combinations of our existing buildings, looking at it strictly from an operational cost perspective. If you were to do this, what would you see as the savings? And then we can get you, it won't be exact, but we can get you pretty close, can't we, John? I say we, you know, and look at various scenarios of combinations, and it can be as many combinations as you want. I don't know if you're ready to direct us on that yet.
But
You know,
you're saying if we merge it.
ask us the question, that if you were to put these two buildings together and they become one, what would you see as, what would you project as operational cost savings? And then we could take that a step further and even give estimates about, would have to consider this is what it would cost to make buildings be able to do that. I mean, it's not an exact science, it isn't, but we can start funneling that down. Motivation of the goal of the committee, of course, is to reduce operating costs, if you remember, while at the same time maintaining or improving academic success. And so, at some point, that's really, in my opinion, is what you need to think through. What combinations do you want to look at of our existing facilities, and at the same time, look at what would a new campus look like, or get us close. To keep the process moving, that's where, in my opinion, where we need to get. But I might as well finish that thought, because, and we all understand that when discussions start about what if you were to combine the two elementary schools at this site, you're going to have a whole group of people that are going to go nuts that that's what we're going to do. We're not. We're investigating and being directed. But that will be construed by some, and the spam will probably hit the fan.
You're telling us to be prepared, right?
It's no different than if we're looking to build a new
Exactly.
facility. Where would that be built?
Exactly.
You know, we're gonna catch,
But the process will bog down if we don't get to this meaty
Right, you
stuff.
just have to be ready for that, and
Yes.
that's all you can do to move forward.
Right. And again, always looking at what does the data tell us.
So, does anybody else have anything else that they want to talk about? And I think we've got some pretty good things to direct the administration on.
Is there anything individually that we could, that we want to talk about doing? I mean, is there something that I could go look at?
I think anytime we're going to get us individually involved with it, you're going to get shot at from the community, because it's, okay, Amanda's doing this for whatever, Jay's doing this for whatever.
So it's best to
I
leave it
think
up to
we're
the
better off to
administration.
leave it to the administration, to bring the data to us, and then we make the decisions.
That's part of the reason why I thought an outside source would help. Because any one of us involved is going to have a little bit of emotion one way or another. And an outside source won't.
You see me, coach.
They're not. Yeah. So, unless you guys have anything else to talk about, Lisa, did you have something you wanted to say?
yeah. I was just gonna say
I think we
this.
can close down.
Before we close this, do we need to direct John or Dr. Feeney to go ahead with the questionnaire, or we can do that in the regular board meeting?
I think we're doing the regular, because work session is, we can talk about stuff, but officially, you better tell me.
Okay.
That'd be my opinion.
I would like a 1 minute break, actually,
would like to escort him to make sure he's safe.